Hey everyone, have you been enjoying this series? If so, there's something really simple you can do to help us. Go on Apple Podcasts or whatever app you've been using to listen to the show and leave us a nice comment and a good star rating. It just takes a minute and it will do wonders for helping new people discover the series. So, thanks a lot and on with the show.
Hello, and welcome to the Newbery Report, where grown women read children's books and argue about them. On today's episode, A Single Shard by Linda Sue Park. Hello, and welcome to the Newbery Report. I, as always, am Kerry Caston, and with me, as always, is Carolyn Burns. Hello, Carolyn.
Hello, Kerry.
And we have a guest with us today. What? This is so exciting. Gina, say hi to lovely people. This is Gina.
Hi.
Yay! Woo-hoo! That is a third voice. Great. And today we're discussing A Single Shard by Linda Sue Park.
It's very exciting. I've never done anything like this before.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
Is this your first podcast?
My very first.
Do you listen to any?
I do.
What do you listen to? You can plug them if you like.
On Being is one of them.
That's such a good one.
I recently got back into it after a break.
Great. So we're going to talk about A Single Shard today. This is the 2002 winner. Carolyn, do you mind treating us to a back of the book reading?
Yeah, of course. Tree Ear, that's the name of our character. Tree Ear has a dream. He has watched the master potter Min take a lump of clay and shape it into a thing of beauty. For Tree Ear, the transformation is a miracle. Someday he wants to perform such a miracle himself. But you cannot just walk up to a master potter and ask him to teach you to his craft, especially not if you're an orphan like Tree Ear. First, Tree Ear must prove he is worthy of Min's time and teachings, so he asks the honorable master if he can work for him, without pay, for the privilege of being near such talent. Tree Ear has taken his first step toward his dream. Realizing a dream can be very hard, though. Sometimes a dream can seem so far away it almost disappears. But maybe if Tree Ear takes it one hill, one valley, one day at a time, just maybe he'll be able to make his dream come true.
Wow, that's one of our longer back of the books, I would say.
Yeah, it is. And it doesn't really tell you much about the plot. I guess now knowing the plot of the book, I recognize what it's talking about.
Elements of the plot.
But, because it's true, the plot-wise, there's not like a ton of action that takes place in this novel. It's more sort of like him kind of learning a craft slowly but surely and coming to terms with who he is and where he is in the world and what he means in like a grander sense.
Gina, we'll get to what you thought of the book in a second, but do you have a philosophy on back of the book reading? Are you very pro, very anti?
I would say I'm anti because it tends to give me a totally different take on what actually happens in the book. And then I have an opinion when I actually haven't read the book, so I tend not to read the back of the book.
That's how Carolyn
That's
feels.
how I am.
Yeah.
I hate the back of the book.
Yeah.
But I read it. That's why I said I thought I might not like it, because I read the back of the book before I read this, and I was like, I don't know. What's this Tree Ear name?
Which you don't normally do, I think.
Yeah. Well, I figured I'd give it a shot, and I proved myself right.
Yeah, forget it. No more back of the books. Carolyn Burns, did you like it?
I liked it.
You did?
I did,
You did?
yeah. I liked it a lot. I thought I might not, because I wasn't sure, just based on sort of like the back of book reading of it being like set so long ago in like a completely different culture, in like talking about pottery, and I was like, ugh, okay. The picture on the front is just a big like kind of shapeless urn, and I was like, I don't know, but I really liked it.
But Gina, what did you think? Did you like it?
I loved it. I cried. I laughed. Yeah, I totally fell in love with the book.
And you've read it multiple times, right?
Well, actually, I got it for my kids. So my kids have read it. My husband has read it, and I didn't read it with them. So this is my first time reading it.
Oh,
but
wow.
I've had the book for like 2 years.
That's great.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, I'm so glad you loved it, and I'm so glad you liked it. I did not love it.
No, Kerry!
I know. Oh, I felt so bad, and I know. I don't know. I think it was I try not to compare books too often, but it reminded me a lot of Sounder in sort of the more like mythologicalness it had about it. It felt a little more bare bones, a little bit more like a parable than it did like a story. That said, there were times where it really kicked me in the face, and I was very upset. And I was surprised at how upset I was during the more like emotional plot points, which we'll get to when we start to cover the book. But sort of the overall framework of it, I felt hard to connect. It felt a little too, more like the Odyssey or something, where like I guess maybe it's just because like we learn to study Ulysses or the Odyssey in school, and I'm like, oh, Ulysses is just like a character that does a thing. Like sometimes you think of like characters from the Bible and stuff, or just, oh, this is a figure. I don't know. I had trouble.
Do you think you just somehow, on some level, knew before we talked that I would like it? And just knew that your role in this podcast apparently is to always disagree with me.
Completely disagree with you. No, I thought maybe you wouldn't like it. And I'd be like, oh, we're going to agree about this.
No, well, that's why I have Gina here. It's 2 against 1 now.
I'm outnumbered. Well, great. I would love to be convinced.
Thoughts?
Yeah, I think, the thing that I got from this book was this tremendous sense of peace and tranquility. And I feel like maybe perhaps that's why it was chosen, because it was such an opposite of the violence and the
tumult or upheaval. Totally.
Yeah. So I don't know if that was like the reaction that they had.
That's super true. There is a lot of patience and simplicity about this book that I did because, like I was telling you guys before we started, I've been working 12 to 14-hour days for the last, 6 weeks. And I was like, can you imagine a time where you didn't have a cell phone and you could, get an email at, 9 o'clock on a Saturday about something that needs to happen, which was, what happened to me yesterday? And I was like, what a great time this was.
But that's what I loved about the book, the simplicity of the language and the simplicity of her message. How there's this awesome line that she has, how could foolishness and pride be such close companions?
Yeah.
I slow clapped to myself at that time in the book, because I was like, you men are so frustrating.
Yes.
As a man and as a person, and I wanted so badly to just slap some sense into him, but I do know so many people have that pridefulness that really can hold you back if you're not careful.
Yeah. But I feel like that, lines like that are so simple yet so powerful, and I feel like that's why I love this book, because everything, like the vase, like the pottery, simple yet there is a strong sense of meaning.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think for me it's such an interesting read because okay, stick with me for a second. As adults living in New York City, I think that all of us, to some extent, however we want, practice some form of mindfulness, whether it's true sort of, what's it called? Truly it's taking time to meditate or to sleep or to read or whatever, however you do it. I think it's just...
Is sleep really mindfulness?
For me, it is.
It does take mindfulness to fall asleep and to stay asleep.
Yes.
So true.
That's true. But I think it's so ingrained to be sort of aware of yourself and your surroundings and sort of your inner life. And this book really taps into that, but it's intended for children. And I think that that's really interesting, that this generation that's growing up and these, like you said, maybe 8, 9, 10-year-old children that are reading this are not practicing mindfulness, so they don't really have a gauge for what that is and how to incorporate that into their lives. But I think it's so nice to see someone just be like, hey kids, let's sit down and just really explain step by step how a pot is made, instead of here, it's your juice, it's in a mug, don't think about where the mug came from, it just exists. That's something I really liked. I was like, I wonder what it would be like to be a child and to read this, and if they are getting sort of a wow, where do the things around me come from experience, or if they're just oh, this is science fiction and nothing in this is real.
Yeah, there were a couple of things that did resonate with me really deeply at this age that I thought were really articulate. In chapter 3, there's the Tree Ear has started to work with Min. So it's like day 2 of working with Min. And day 1, all he's done is send him up into the woods and say, get a whole bunch of wood, bring it down, which we find out later is because it's Min's turn to collect wood, and he's now outsourced it to Tree Ear. So Tree Ear comes back the next day, and he's been yelled at by Min because he didn't bring the wood to the kiln like he was supposed to, which, of course, classic bad manager, Min didn't tell him to do that. So Min is yelling at him, and then finally Min paused to draw breath. Tree Ear dare not look up. He felt like a beast with 2 heads, one ashamed and the other resentful. Ashamed that he had not finished the work properly, resentful that Min had not given him complete instructions. Fill the cart, that had been the order, and he had done it. Was he expected to read Min's mind as well? How many bosses have I had that are just like that? And to explain it as a beast with 2 heads, one resentful, one ashamed, I was like, yeah, I feel both those things so intently anytime this happens to me.
No, I sort of mentally highlighted that passage too because I thought it was interesting, and I think that this kid, I don't know if it's just a difference in like how you're raised and how you're expected to get along with like adults and with people in charge, but this kid just is really good about letting things just like blow off his back, and he's just like, oh, silly me, I got to work harder. And I can understand coming from a place of such extreme poverty and having no chances, that the chance to toil for 14 hours a day loading and chopping and carrying wood and cracking open blisters and getting hurt, all so that you can have one single meal that day, is like a dream come true for him. And I think it's really interesting, and it's definitely sort of like be thankful for what you have, you know?
I guess that said, I think he's a little more self-aware than I am even, or that I was up to like maybe 3 years ago. I think I'm better now. But to sort of continue on this path of like bad upper management, or having to manage up, I guess. Great. So he's graduated. Now Tree Ear has graduated from wood, and now he's gathering clay. And he has to rinse the clay. We go through this whole process of collecting it, which takes a certain amount of skill, and then rinsing it, which is a different skill. And Tree Ear is learning these skills as quickly as possible, but he has never done this before. And Min has yelled at him once again, and he did not know why Min did not explain things more fully. Tree Ear's mistakes often cost valuable time or wasted valuable clay. Then Min would shout or scold while Tree Ear stared at his toes in shame, and more often than not, resentment. And I'm not sure if Tree Ear makes this observation or if Linda Sue Park is making this observation, but that Min not explaining things was cost valuable time and a waste of clay. I work at a law firm part-time, and I think that all the time. I'm like, if you just told me what to do, we would waste a lot less time and a lot less paper if you had just been like articulate the first time. No one else has problems with work. Everyone feels great.
I think Linda Sue Park has problems with work.
That's true. I was looking her up, and she worked for an oil company, I guess, for 2 years, like in their copywriting department. And this is like in her bio on her website, and she said like she learned how to make any topic interesting, well, almost any.
Oh, wow. Well, I know like in the Confucian communication, or even Korean communication, is very roundabout. It's never direct.
Oh, really?
And that is like a well-known problem of our culture, of our heritage. That is you just go in circles, and you never directly say exactly what you're meaning or what you're intending to say.
Do you know why that is, or where that comes from?
I don't know. I think it's because it is out of respect. It's a very reverential. Does that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that word? And because Min is older, and is his teacher in essence, Tree Ear can't ask questions. He can't clarify.
Yeah.
So anyway,
no, that's really interesting. That explains a lot of how Crane Man talks to him too. I think, doesn't Trier at some point say he likes to take in what Crane Man says and sort of like mull on it over the course of the day? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I noticed that Crane Man in particular spoke slightly more in what I would call proverbs than I think.
Yeah, he was definitely a storyteller.
Yeah, definitely. This is sort of the moment I knew that Crane Man was going to die. was when Tree Ear had his own sort of proverbial thought on his own by himself, and he was like, "Oh, I'll have to talk to Crane Man about that when I get back." And I was like, Crane Man ain't going to be there when you get back. And it was when he was hiding from the fox. Yeah, Tree Ear thought, "We are afraid of things we do not know, just because we do not know them." Tree Ear thought, pleased with himself. He must remember the idea Crane Man would be interested in discussing it. And I was like, that's a really good thought, kid. But that means you've moved on. Like in the novel world, that means you've moved on past your paternal figure, and he's going to go. It was just so interesting, the like fear that he exhibited. And I think in the author's note at the end, she says that that's something akin to the way that bats were described. Like people have all of these like vampire and gothic scary stories that originate from bats, even though it's a fairly harmless animal. Mm-hmm. But the first time that that Crane Man talks about a fox, like we see Tree Ear being like that, like covering his ears, and like don't talk about it anymore, which I thought was so funny.
Yeah,
or not funny, so different than what I would have expected.
I think it's so funny because towards the end when he's on this journey and he's sleeping in the woods at night and it's super dark and he hears an animal rustling, and his number one fear is a fox, and I'm reading it being like, your number one fear should be like hungry mountain lion. But it's so funny because like when it turns out to be the fox, to me I'm like, oh, he's gonna be fine, and to him he's like, this is literally the worst thing that could possibly have come from the woods. I am guaranteed to die. And it was a funny like time in the book because I'm like, I know you're going to be okay, but his fear is so palpable and he's so just over like consumed with this like irrational idea that the fox is gonna like teleport him to a lair and then like rip his bones apart if he looks into his eyeballs. It was just really interesting. I'm not trying to like belittle any
feelings are real. We appreciate feelings. We respect feelings.
I don't want to belittle it or anything like that, but it read very silly because it's not a current fear. We read in Bud Not Buddy, he gets trapped in a shed and he's genuinely worried about vampire bats. And I was like, that is still, even though I know a vampire bat is not going to come down and suck his blood, that is still currently something that people out in the world like still have a gauge for that being a terrifying thing. And I was like, I've never met anyone who thinks foxes are literally going to suck out your soul or hear all of these things. So it read as this like sort of funny moment, even though it obviously was not intending to be that way.
Yeah, you're sort of making the author's point though, because she did say it's like akin to people's fear of bats. So yeah, I guess it's just an illustration of something that feels foreign. Mm-hmm.
But there were 2 points when Tree Ear was working with the clay and just asking the clay to speak to him.
Yeah.
And he was kind of losing a sense of self-awareness or self-consciousness. Yeah. And just allowing the clay to speak to him. And that was one point where I just fell in love with this book, because I feel like with any form of art, whatever it is, like I feel like teaching is a form of art. Like I have to lose my self-consciousness in order for me to be a great teacher. So I just felt like that was a really great illustration of art.
What do you mean you feel like you need to lose your self-consciousness to be a great teacher?
Self-consciousness as in not being insecure, not thinking about how am I looking to others, just really being in the moment and really going with the flow of everything.
Yeah. Yeah. So. Yeah, I thought it's definitely a crystallizing moment for him the first time he realizes that the clay is not ready and he needs to rinse it or drain it a couple more times. Mm-hmm. I was really happy for him. It's like all he wanted was to know how many times to rinse out the clay, and then it told him.
Yeah.
I was a little frustrated that we didn't figure out what the process was, but I guess the process is just hard work. You do it enough times, and then you sort of find it, which suggests that it's not an innate ability that Min was born with as a potter, but one that he spent a long, long time. We're told at least a year and a half, right, that he works with Min to figure out even the right amount of time to rinse out the clay before you can use it. So I thought that was nice. Showing like hard work does pay off, but you have to work hard first. Yeah. As opposed to like, I feel like there are a number of kids' books, Harry Potter, where like they have this innate ability already, and it's like, well, what are we supposed to work for, us normies? Like, either we got it or we don't. Seems to be what you're saying, but yeah, if you just work hard enough, you'll be able to hear the clay. So that was nice.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's always like a little bit of both. You have to have some level of talent and some level of luck, and then some level of just like learning and like really perfecting your craft. And it's why there are people that like they'll work their entire lives, but they'll never be like really good actors. But then there are people that are like super talented right off the bat that'll never be really good because they're not like taking the time and patience and practice to like hone their skill. So it's a little bit of both.
Where do you see yourself, Carolyn, on that spectrum?
I'm a brilliant actress.
Who's never going to really make it, or?
Yep, never going to make it. I've never been to an audition.
It's really hard to get the part that way.
I'm waiting for someone to come up to me and discover me in the park.
Yeah, or at the vet's office.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you and the scrubs. Get in my movie. Should we talk about the scene with the robbers? Do we want to go there?
Yeah, sure. That heartbreaking, awful, awful scene.
Why'd they do it?
They're jerks? I don't know. It did feel very petty just to rob him. I liked, though, that they didn't steal it. I know that seems strange. And I gotta say, I felt immediately stupid as soon as they were starting to walk away, and I was like, maybe the Putts are going to make it. And then obviously they crashed. And then obviously the book is called A Single Shard. And I was like, I can't believe I didn't see this coming. That's on me. But
that means it did it well. It did the job of the play.
I'm not practicing enough mindfulness. But I was very fearful that they were going to steal them, and I liked that it wasn't that simple, that they were just like, oh no one would buy it from us because this is obviously stolen goods, you know.
I like that it addressed that. I too was like, why don't they just steal it? Why don't they just steal it and sell it? But that they could tell that it was a gift for the palace. Mm-hmm. Like, it's interesting that there isn't a black market at this time, I guess.
Yeah. Not in these small little villages, I guess.
Yeah, I guess who would the buyers be?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is where I cried a little bit. Like all that hard work just disappearing. And but I thought it was a really cool way to set up how much respect the emissary and how well known Min was.
Yeah.
I just thought that was really cool how he's like, oh, I just took a single look at the shard and I knew exactly of his talents and his abilities.
Right, that he could tell enough from that like what he had seen already plus the tiny bit of inlay, which I had to like Google so many things reading this.
Yeah, I still don't know what inlay is. I
can show you a picture of it, but all the pictures look different, so I'm not actually sure what it means. But yeah,
it's just when you carve out a chunk of it, like it's like a relief. You carve out and then you fill it in with a different material, but then it's just like a flat surface.
That doesn't help.
Okay.
How did you feel about the fact that Crane Man told him to go up there, and he wouldn't have gone up onto that plateau or that cliff if Crane Man hadn't told him the story and said, you have to stop here? Because we even have the line where he says that he would have preferred to just continue on, but he wanted to be able to tell Crane Man about this.
I might even say Crane Man knew that he would experience something like this, you know? I think of Crane Man as this kind of godlike person who knows all.
Yeah.
And I think he knew that this would be a really important lesson for Tree Ear, perhaps. I don't know.
It just was a lot. was a huge experience. And it felt so... I didn't see it coming. I totally didn't see it coming, and I was very upset. I guess I should have realized that I was being lulled into a false sense of security. I was like, this is going great.
Well, yeah, because there's no other conflict in the entire book. Of course, you're like, no, he's just going to do the journey. We're going to see some trees. He's going to do it fine, and then we're going to go home.
There's going to be a fox. He's going to be hungry. It's going to be hard. But not that they're going to, like, take the pack, realize that they can't steal it or sell it, so they're just going to chuck it off the side of this cliff.
And they were laughing, weren't they? They were laughing gleefully or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They did it just for the love of being bullies. Did it upset anyone that in the end they could have just shown the embassy guy a shard of like because he remember when he broke the original pots that had that oxidizing process where they had those brown spots on them, and he was like, we could have just shown him those. He would have understood because he knows that, like, oh, that was a kiln mishap, but look at the artwork, and I can see that you would be able to do this. And how frustrated Tree Ear was because he's like, ugh, just show him that. Like, it seems so silly. And then in the end, that's what he does. He still doesn't show him a completed pot. And it's just like, see, it felt almost like aggressive. Like, seaman, see, all you need is a shard. Just trust me.
Yeah, it felt like... the Wizard of Oz, like Dorothy could have gone home the whole time. She just had to find out, I think he had a theory that the emissary would totally trust a shard, but he had to be robbed and have the faces thrown off the side of the cliff in order to find out he had to be courageous enough to show him the shard, I guess.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I felt like he had to make the journey, and I think that's like the whole process of pottery and the clay and kind of having to go through the process rather than just coming up with the product.
Yeah. Did it make anybody want to take a pottery class?
No, it sounded tedious and awful.
More about A Single Shard in just a minute.
If you're enjoying this show, you might also like some of the other podcasts on Race Car Radio. For instance, you might try Mind Your Own Business with Mike and Matt. Do you own or run your own company? I'm a small business owner, and let me tell you, it's a lot harder than I thought it would be. But never fear, we're here to help. On Mind Your Own Business, Mike Gansel and Matt Plosiak, two brilliant consultants with decades of experience between them, take real questions from real small business owners and give them answers that help put them on the track to success. It's smart, funny, informative, and we promise it will help you make your company the best it can be. Listen and subscribe now to Mind Your Own Business with Mike and Matt at racecarradio.com. Race Car Radio is proud to support the work of Aya Worldwide, a tenacious and dedicated organization working to address the root causes of poverty in West Africa. Because they believe that who a person is and where they come from should not solely determine what they are able to achieve. To learn about their work and how you can support it, please visit ayaworldwide.org.
And now, back to A Single Shard.
The crux of this book is the message of kindness. And but you were saying, is he going to find his family? But I think in the Korean culture, not having a family is seen as, in all cultures, not having a family is seen as something that is so taboo, and so it's not even part of your life. You don't even talk about it. You don't, there's such shame behind it that I thought that the power to create their own kinship, was really powerful for me. Like, because I know it's so hard.
Yeah. Totally. Especially because they say that. So I didn't know that, but it was like the author's note has there's a tradition to take in family,
right,
and that so Crane Man and Tree Ear would be sort of anomalies in their time, and any time, she says, but it's not his fault. Like, he was 2, I think it says, when his parents died because of a fever. So I guess, is it weird that he should have had aunts and uncles to take him in, or
he should have had somebody?
Yeah,
you know, but he had nobody. Just the same as Crane Man.
Yeah.
He should have had somebody, some long lost, you know, relative who was whatever, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th cousin.
Yeah,
But
It's interesting to think then that Crane Man allowed him to stay, you know, because the original plan was they dropped him off because there was a fever up at the monastery, so he couldn't go up and live with the monks. And when they came for him, Tree Ear would not leave. He was like, "This is my home now." A small child is like, "This is my home." He wouldn't let go of Crane Man's legs. But you would think that Crane Man, understanding the culture in which they live, would be like, "You have to go. Like, I am not your family. We don't like. You need to go live." A life that you might be able to have more success. And it felt, in retrospect, a little bit selfish of him as a character, as someone who is so open and really wants the best for Tree Ear, to allow him to live there felt a little bit it was an unbelievable portion of the book, because he felt as a character like he would have understood that the best thing for that child would be to go live with the monks so he could have like a shot at having a real life. Because this whole pottery thing, that's something that he does on his own, completely independent of Crane Man.
Well, actually, that's a good point. I think that was selfish. Like, now that you bring that up, I think that was very selfish of Crane Man to just keep him for himself because he enjoyed his company. I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's so sad and lonely. And if
there's
a small child that won't let go of your leg, I don't know. I melt when kids do it. I'm just like, yes, like, here's all of the chocolate that I have. I don't know. Like, if a kid was like, I don't want to go, I'd be like, you never have to leave. Stay here forever. So I don't know. And I wonder if too, because he didn't go up, Crane Man didn't go up to the monastery. And he's like, I just didn't make it, and sort of like read that as a sign for himself that the fox crossed his path, and he's like, I'm just not going to make it up there. And I wonder if he felt some sort of similar kinship to, you didn't make it up there either, and there's a reason we didn't. And if you don't want to go, I'm going to trust your little 2-year-old judgment and respect your choice.
Sure. What do you guys think about literally the last sentence of the book? So the ending. Oh, go ahead.
Well, which last sentence do you mean? The sort of like mini italicized epilogue thing?
The mini italicized epilogue. So the book ends with, Tree Ear is like going off into the woods. He's excited. He's going to get his own pottery wheel. He has a new family. Everything's great. And then there's this tiny little epilogue that sort of talks about there's this certain vase that's the most prized of Korea's cultural treasures. And then it goes on to say it is called the 1,000 Cranes Vase. Its maker is unknown. And the book ends with Tree Ear looking up at the sky being like, gosh, I can't wait till I'm a potter. What am I going to make? Something maybe with cranes on it. And then they say that, which is a real vase. You can go listeners, Google it. It's beautiful. But the intended implication is that it is Tree Ear's vase, which is historically impossible to know. So it's sort of like this, I don't know. I'm curious how you guys felt about that.
There's another book. I don't remember if it's a Newbery Award winner. So there's another book called The Second Mrs. Gioconda, or Gioconda. I'm not sure how one pronounces it in Italian. But it's written by E.L. Konigsberg, and it's about how the Mona Lisa came about. And this is historical fiction. It's sort of a new... we haven't read any books exactly like this so far, I think. And that's just something I suspend my disbelief for. Like, basically, she must have at some point been inspired to tell a story around about this time, found this vase, and imagined a person that would have created it.
Yeah, for me, it really helps. It helps put the story, gives me a visual. I love having visuals, and I love the fact that it actually exists. And so it helped me kind of connect more.
Yeah.
Is that it on the cover?
It's not.
What?
Yeah,
I just assumed that was it.
As you probably rightfully should assume. No. So the cover that we all have the same edition of this book, and it's got a vase on it that has cranes in circles, but I implore you to look at the real one. Oh. It's similar. The cranes in circles are similar, but they're much, much closer together, and between are just these little whiffs of clouds, and then there are cranes sort of like flying throughout the whiffs of clouds. So it's similar, but even the one on the front has these cracks in it to represent like a vase being blown apart. We're all looking at the picture now.
No, this is much more beautiful.
Yeah, it seemed a strange choice to have it be based on a real vase, but then not have the real vase.
Yeah,
it's also a different shape. Which I had to look this up too. The prunus vase, I didn't know what that was. And I guess it's where it's sort of wider at the top than it is at the bottom, but doesn't have a neck really. They don't seem to mostly have necks. And the one on the cover of the book has a neck, which I think is interesting too. Mm-hmm. It seems like a weird diversion.
Yeah, and the one on the book has like sort of like this wide-brimmed opening, and this has this tiny little tapered hole because it's intended only to hold a single branch. And that's sort of, it's like a bud vase. It's like for one flower, one branch, one thing, and not sort of like for a bouquet, which is this sort of like almost like conical shape of the one on the book.
Yeah, the one on the book is like the classic vase that you see when it's like, do you see two faces or do you see a vase? Just to like give people a quick visual.
Okay.
Everybody's done that, right? Yeah. Do you guys I like the green. I sort of like had trouble picturing that the whole time because I was reading an ebook, so I didn't have a cover. But looking at that picture and then looking at the 1,000 crane vase, I'm like, oh, that's what that green is. That's so cool.
But that vase is not cracked, right? It doesn't have cracks in there?
Correct.
I don't think so. Mm-mm. Why? This one? Oh.
Yeah, look really closely. You can see.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a different style, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
It's an interesting choice, whoever made the cover of this book.
If you want to tell your story on the podcast, just drop us a line. Yeah, there was So speaking of the title and it being cracked in the shards, so there's the first time that the vases are cracked, right? Where Tree Ear has the idea to tell the emissary, like, no, just look at this, you'll be able to figure it out. And I definitely was like, is this the single shard? But he found there were like a lot of shards, so I was like, can't be. And so I too had that moment when the vases were thrown off the cliff of like, this is it. Just take a single shard. This is the time.
Oh, man.
Another thought I had about the sort of meditative or, I guess the meditative nature and the sort of removing of self or the removing of self-consciousness that I had was like, it's so frustrating that the very last part of this process, the firing in the kiln, you can't see, you can't touch, and decides what the piece is going to look like. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking when they were loading the kiln in with the last batch before the emissary came back, and they're like, he could be here any day, and that the fire takes somewhere between 3 and 5 days. So like you had to be done with your with actually forming the vase 3 to 5 days before the emissary showed up, so that you could put it in the kiln and then do nothing for those 3 to 5 days.
Right.
Oh, to like have to remove yourself from that part of the process is, I mean, I'm a control freak. I'll admit it. And like, I would go crazy.
Yeah.
I have to let the fire do it.
Yeah.
Well, Min camps out. He doesn't eat. He doesn't sleep for days. And it's like, this is my entire life's work. And I have lost all control. And there's a very strong possibility it is going to be ruined, which it does end up ruined. And I think it's telling that, like the next time around, they're like, we have a little bit more time. We can do this right. They did it in 3 batches because they're like, now I'm able to control this a little bit more. But again, it all just harkens back to like, he is a pottery expert, this emissary. Like, he gets it. Just show it to him and say like, hey, man, next time I'll be able to, do this in a couple more batches. And then he'll be like, cool, great.
Yeah, there's a beautiful passage on page 52 she writes, the work, so she's talking about the vase, right? The gentle curves of the vase, its mysterious green color, the sharp angles of the plum twigs, the work of a human, the work of nature, clay from earth, a branch from the sky. And I feel like that is what you're talking about. It's like it's half human work, but then you just have to wait. You just have to like let nature run its course or let the fire do its work. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I thought that was a really beautiful illustration.
Oh my gosh, totally. Yeah, especially just relinquishing of the control and being like, I've done everything I can, world. Mm-hmm. Pick up the rest, please.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the amount of patience that would take and the amount of selflessness or self-control that would take to say, I respect and understand that I can't control the entirety of the process and I'm willing to continue in this art form.
Right.
Year after year, knowing that there's nothing that I can do about the last 10% and most crucial forming part of it. Oof. And then in the author's note, she talks about how we know now that it was oxidizing and that it had to do with the amount of oxygen in the kiln, and that's why they figured out that to a certain extent because they were trying to cover up all the holes and get it as hot as possible. And now that we've been able to account for the oxidation, we can't get it quite as green or quite as bright as they used to be able to get it. So it's like the trade-off of what you can control and what you can't. Mm-hmm. If you do one thing, it affects the way that it comes out. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the dead son.
Why?
Wow. I assume that Min was like he was before when his child was alive, and I assume that he interacted with his child in the same way that he interacts with Tree Ear, or did to the extent that he could. It seems like Tree Ear is the same age that the son was when the son died. And it made me, of course, feel so much worse for Min because, if you know that that's how you were treating your child and then your child dies and that's it, you only had the one, you'd probably regret a lot of that and you have the grief of the life that you won't be able to have and also the grief of the experience that you've had before not being what you would have wanted it to be because he was presumably grooming his child to take over the role, and he knew that this sort of tough love approach would be the best to get him to the sort of Potter's state of mind. But now that he knows he's not getting that Potter relationship, he was just giving him tough love for what ended up being no reason. So that would, I can't even imagine how much tougher that would have made him with a new child coming into his life. And then when Tree Ear asks to learn how to throw, to learn how to work at the wheel. And Min says, "Know this, orphaned one," Min said slowly. "If you ever learn to make a pot, it will not be from me." "Why?" Min repeated. "I will tell you why. The potter trade goes from father to son. I had a son once, my son. He is gone now. It is him I would have taught. You are not my son." Okay. All right, Min. That, I think, for me, was the first really, really tough blow. I mean, it's hard to compare it to the vases, being thrown off the cliff because it's just such a different experience. Mm-hmm. But that was like a real kick in my chest when Min said that. How did you guys feel?
I felt similarly, and I also it was a little bit unbelievable for me, the next portion, which is that he, Tree Ear, did not know that. Because the next sort of chapter goes into, it's actually kind of a rule that potters can only be from a father-son relationship and no one else is allowed in.
I did love that the next page is then he realized that all the other potter's apprentices were sons.
Yeah, there were a couple times in the book that I was like, I don't know about this anymore. It took me out of the story. And that was one of them where I was like, he's a really smart kid. He knows all about these goings on around town from just searching through people's trash. And yet he's never realized that his one aspiration is literally impossible to him because he's not the son of a potter. That felt like, wait, what? I would have appreciated it more if it was like Tree Ear had realized he had been fooling himself this whole time, but instead this sort of like ignorance that he had rung a little bit untrue.
Yeah. I felt like it was false drama. And it reminded me of like Korean soap operas. I don't know if you've ever watched any Korean soap operas.
I will now.
There is just so much drama. And after a while, you know exactly what's going to happen, but you're still sucked in,
Yeah.
This is what it reminded me of.
I think that's all soap operas.
But there's I highly recommend watching a Korean soap opera. It's like they have its own characteristic that's very Korean soap opera-ish.
That's so funny that neither of you guys did that moment resonate, and for me that was like the deepest, most resonant moment. Okay,
maybe that's why we disagree about
we were reading different books, I guess. So now on to everybody's favorite section, fan favorite, the illusion of life. So we'll find one metaphor or one visual illusion or one moment in the book that sort of sums up how life works. Carolyn, do you have one you want to read?
I do. I mean, this book is full of them. So lots of words of wisdom. And I think like in general, it's a little bit of like a coming of age story in the sense that he is just like learning how the world works and how he fits in it. The one that I highlighted, of which there are 1,000, is very early on. It's on page 6. And it says, "Work gives a man dignity, stealing takes it away." And it was right there at the very beginning, and it really, and I was like, oh, highlight that. That might end up later. And when I went back and sort of revisited the areas that I had highlighted, I was like, I think that one kind of stuck through the whole novel. It really, him sort of like cultivating this work ethic and then realizing sort of what the power of really learning a craft is, I thought was really important and great.
So my illusion was, and this is another one that I felt resonated really deeply for me, but you'll have to tell me, Gina, if it like appears on soap operas or something. And it's, of course, a line from Crane Man, which is, "I have no gift for you beyond words," he said. "I would tell you this. Of all the problems you may meet on your journey, it will be people who are the greatest danger. But it will also be people to whom you must turn if you ever are in need of aid. Remember this, my friend, and you'll travel well." All right, I know. I know that nothing hurts me more than a person can, and nothing makes me feel better than a person can. But you're right, book. That is so true. And I feel like so much how we have to navigate this world.
Yeah.
I have many favorite moments, but one of them is when it's towards the end of the book when he's renamed.
Oh, yeah.
And that for me, especially because in the Korean tradition, the Korean culture, naming somebody is very important, and it takes. I know that I was named by my parents took me to a numerologist or a person who looks at the stars or something, and they looked at all the facts, the facts of my birth, the circumstances of my birth, and then named me. And my name has a meaning. And I know that the name that he was renamed has a meaning. I don't know what it is.
Well, we're told at least that it shares a syllable with the child that they had before who died.
Right, yeah.
And I think he says it's an honor only bestowed on a sibling.
Yeah.
So we're told at least some sense of a meaning. Do you want to share with us what your name means?
Yeah. Well, my Korean name is Po-hyun, which means Po means helping, and then Hyun means wisdom. So helping wisdom, which I really love. I love that.
And you're a teacher.
Yeah. So maybe
beautiful.
It all lined up.
Yeah, that's so nice. That's so perfect.
So the whole idea of renaming and having the power to create your own kinship, your own family, because every person was renamed. They renamed. Min's wife asked Tree Ear to call her Ajima, which is creating more of a family connection. Tree Ear was renamed, right? Mm-hmm. And the names of Crane Man and Tree Ear, they were renamed basically when they met each other. So just the idea of like creating your own family connections, even if it's not blood, that you have that power.
Yeah, and even though Min wasn't like technically renamed, he renamed the relationship that he had with Tree Ear by telling him that go get this wood for your wheel. You'll need a wheel for me to keep up. Yeah.
I love the idea. I know that in certain countries still, like, your name, it does like very strongly relate to like who you are, or you're named after something, or I think it's like Swedish culture, it's all like very based on like who your parents are, and like certain names are passed down every single generation. And it's not like a super meaningful in America. I mean, people do like you take your father's name usually, but
Blue Ivy.
These are what we name our children now. But I like the idea of a name actually meaning something.
Yeah.
And when your life changes and when like you come into new circumstance, then your name should change as well. And that's, I guess, what we do kind of with like marriage. In certain times, people will take on the names. But even that is kind of falling out of favor a little bit more in like the generations that we're in now. So it's interesting to me to kind of revisit that and see like how powerful it still can be to someone who doesn't even know what his given name was.
Right. Yeah.
To then be given another one, I can see how like incredibly powerful that would be.
Yeah, I think I like how it shows the agency that these characters have. It's so nice. What's one thing I like a lot about children's books is like there seems to be a huge emphasis on agency of the main character, especially among children, where children probably don't feel like they have a lot. They feel like there are a lot of rules that they're negotiating a lot of the time, a lot of learning to conform to different groups that they're hanging out in or forced to be in. And particularly when we get this, the idea that custom is almost more important than law or more strict than law, and that they're dealing with this custom of, in this particular sense, the pottery being handed down from father to son, and that they actually have the agency and the ability to change or to navigate that system successfully and not be held back by it. And I think that the renaming is names aren't tangible, but like nor are they concrete. Is sort of a like vocalized way of, articulated way of demonstrating their agency in that system.
Yeah.
Oh, it's always nice to have agency. Great. So now we should rate this book. I'm going to give this 6 skips of a rock, not just the 4 that Tree Ear got, but the whole 6.
That's a perfect score. You said you hated this book.
I did not say I hated it.
You can't then go back.
Miss
Did
Park.
we change your mind?
No.
Yes.
Kind of.
Yay!
Kind of is a success. No, I think it gets all 6 skips. Absolutely. It worked hard.
Before sinking to the bottom.
More like unexpected flight like a bird before doing what rocks do. Yeah.
All right. I'll take it. I'm going to give it 1,000 cranes vase. Because I really liked it. I think it deserved every single one of those cranes. I'm curious to count that vase and see how many cranes are on the 1,000 cranes vase, because it's not 1,000.
It seems like it would be a very meditative activity, though.
Oh, yeah. Maybe I'll do that tonight.
Yeah. And you, Gina, what would you give it?
I would give it a single shard.
Oh, that's so nice. Yeah. 'Cause that's all it takes.
That's all it takes.
A single shard can change your life.
Yeah.
Can get you a royal commission. If you're good enough. Don't just break vases.
It's got to be like a good shard.
Yeah, like a really good one. All right, thank you so much. That's our show. That's everything that there is to say about a single shard. There's nothing else to discuss. So we did it.
Everyone stop talking about this book immediately.
Yeah, this is it. Just print it. Carolyn Burns, as always, thank you so much for co-hosting the show.
Yeah, thank you. This is great.
Gina, thank you so much for being our guest today. It was such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for inviting me. It was very fun.
Yay! I hope your first podcasting experience was a good one.
Yes, it was good. You guys are very nice.
You're going to be on like Terry Gross's show next week and on Being the week after. You're addicted to it. It's a great experience.
Open the doors.
Great. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, bye.
Yay!
Thanks so much for listening. Join the conversation and tell us what you thought about the book on facebook.com/Newbery Report. That's NEWBERY Report. And at Newbery Report on Twitter. And never miss a show by making sure you're subscribed on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and all your favorite podcast apps. You can also find our show and some other terrific podcasts at www.racecarradio.com. The Newbery Report is hosted and recorded by me, Kerry Caston. My co-host is Carolyn Burns. And our guest today was Gina Jung. It was edited by Austin Colon. Our executive producer is David Hoffman. The Newbery Report is a production of Race Car Radio.
Race Car Radio is a division of Citizen Race Car. We tell stories.